Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. The book author series that we have monthly is a continual source of inspiration because we get to talk to extraordinary leaders who have taken the time, in addition to all the other things that they're doing, family obligations, business obligations, community obligations, to be able to pull together their thoughts on a topic near and dear to them so that they can continue their legacy well beyond this year and beyond. And so we have scheduled 5 speakers. Unfortunately, one of our speakers, Christina, has an emergency health issue that hopefully gets resolved very quickly. They're at a hospital, I believe in Amsterdam, working through things. And so she'll keep us updated, hopefully, and that'll all be resolved. But the remaining folks that we have on the call are all extraordinary. And I think you're going to really enjoy the conversation. The goal here today is to hear from them and hear from Chris Bennett, maybe, and from his phone. Hi, Chris. Good to see you in the UK. Hope all is well. And to hear from you, all of you, including Chris, in terms of hopefully at the end of this, after we get to chat with all of the authors and they share their thoughts and talk to each other, that there will be time for Q&A at the end. We will be finished up in an hour, which now turns out to be about 55 minutes. And so that will be my goal as moderator. Sometimes I fail and sometimes I'm able to do it, but that will be my goal to finish up so that you enjoy the time and get to meet these authors that are, again, all extraordinary. But before we start, I would like to just quickly announce and introduce Gloria Peterson. Gloria is the brainchild behind the book author series. We've now, Gloria, done maybe close to 40 events over the last couple of years with book authors. We started out with around 20 book authors at Global Chamber, and we're now somewhere around 75 or 80. And so thank you for getting us to focus in on this area. And it's even helped Cesar and I in our book, inspiring us to have a direction on the book and actually doing some writing on the book for its publication next year. Gloria, did you want to kick off with any opening comments?
Well, I've written 4 books, which everybody pretty much knows about, but this whole series has inspired me to finish a book I started more on personal development. And I started about 5 years ago, and I've gone back and forth on it and added another one. So I'm adding 2 more books I'll tell you about in November.
Fantastic. And we'll hear again from Gloria at the end, as we will from Eleni Denslow, who is the moderator for next month. I get to moderate a few events at Global Chamber. I very rarely get to moderate this one. And so I'm really excited to speak because I love all 4 of these people who are speaking today. They're all really quite amazing. I would love to start with Dr. Velma Traham. She recently spoke at another Global Chamber event, Women in Global Leadership. Her work with diversity, equity, inclusion is legendary and world-changing. Her work is really not just improving business, but improving lives. And so, Dr. Traham, thank you for all that you do in the real world of work. And now let's shift over to the book side of work. Tell us a little bit more about your book. What was the inspiration? Tell us a little bit more about it and why you wrote it.
Yes, thank you very much for having me. It's always a pleasure and honor to be with Doug. Doug is amazing. I love what you all are doing with the book series. So thank you very much again. As Doug mentioned, I am Dr. Velma Traham, and I am the author of a book titled When God Says Go. Turning your storms into an unshakable relationship with God, leaving it all behind. I authored this book in 2017 after going through a divorce and leaving my hometown, Houston, Texas. I don't know how many Houston people are on, but Texas is an amazing state. In the midst of the transition, I experienced a lot of, roadblocks. I experienced a lot of adversity. I experienced a lot of everything. And so when God Says Go is a powerful near-death testimony of how I survived a car crash that should have ultimately ended my life. And in that, I believe that, when we have the courage to leave things that does not add to the ultimate value of our purpose and our lives, I believe sometimes that can be very, very challenging. And, I was, raised in abject poverty in Houston. But I was very, very determined to get myself out of that situation. And I was determined not to allow my end to look like my beginning. And so for me, I authored When God Says Go to help others to understand the importance of going, to understand the importance of not being afraid to go, whether that be a toxic relationship, a job that does not value your purpose, your skill set, whatever that thing is, whatever it is, it's time to go. And so that is, that's the overall high-level overview of When God Says Go. And if you have any specific questions, Doug, I am happy to answer. But as you know, I can go on and on and on and ramble here, but I'll pause here and allow you to ask any specific questions.
It's not rambling at all. Really great information. For some reason, not sure I knew that you were from Houston. And just kind of ironically, my first assignment was in Beaumont, 84 miles east of Houston. It was billed to me by DuPont as a suburb of Houston, not exactly. And in fact, one of the things that I did was go to Houston a lot. And one of 3 times when I almost died in a car crash was when I fell asleep driving from Beaumont to Houston. Ooh. And on I-10, and the road was like they had made it a construction 2-way lane. And I woke up and I was in the wrong lane with a car headed toward me. So I can relate to that aspect of being inspired to not drive when sleeping, for sure, in Houston. And so thank you for sharing that. That's extraordinary. And I guess many of us, and probably the other authors too, there was one moment like you had, Dr. Velma, that inspired them. But let's hear more. Dr. Charles Bernard, I'm not sure you're a doctor, but you seem like a doctor to me because you're so dignified and you're so thoughtful. And normally when we think of people who are sales leaders, I'm not sure that's always the first thing that you think of, but Charles, definitely we think about. I certainly think about that about you, and I'm sure your clients do as well. He takes sales to another level, and the way he thinks about it in terms of a service orientation. Charles, tell us a little bit more about your book as well. Why did you write it? What inspired you? And how would you like to kick off today about that?
Someone years ago, Doug, shared an insight, and Dr. Velma, this is for you as well, that there are no coincidences in life. And it's interesting that a number of people have talked about a car accident. I actually literally just finishing writing about a character in my book where she's a sales trainer, and she was a motorist on a mountain, and the truck in front of her, a pipe went through her windshield and missed her head by inches. And in avoiding the pipe, she swerved and the front tire blew and changed the orientation of the vehicle where she was headed, which is over a ravine. And her 8-year-old daughter was in the front seat with her. And she thoroughly believed it was divine intervention. And from that moment, she made a vow to be kind and careful and thoughtful and of service to all her clients. So that's so amazing that that topic just came up literally as I had literally finished writing that character. But the title of my book is Enabling Buying in a World of Selling. It's autobiographical to some extent, I'd say to a fairly large extent. And last time I was on this call, I talked about an editor. Some of you may remember that. And the editor has given me some really good guides. He read the first draft and he said, it's as dry as an egg yolk and a hard-boiled egg. And he said, people want to know about you. So I literally reinvented the book to talk about me, my life, my travels, etc., which I'll talk about later. But in terms of sticking to the question, which is, you know, what inspired me, why, I want to make sure that the message for the book is very clear early on, like in the first chapter. And that is that I don't believe in sales, which is funny to say, right? I don't believe in selling, which is funny to say as a sales trainer. I believe in buying. And I think the world today is oriented to force, pressure, cajole, push salespeople to make transactions, you know. And in the first, just to give you a sense, in the first paragraph or so, from my own experience, I say, you won't learn about selling from a sales manager. You won't learn about selling from a sales trainer. The one person that you will learn from, if you really want to be a good seller, is a buyer. A buyer will teach you. And the question is, it's a rhetorical question. How many salespeople are out there learning from their buyers? And I would say, because of what I do, because I train salespeople all day long, every day, they're totally not doing that. They're totally responding to the survival and the anxiety put upon them by their managers. So I feel there is an audience for people on the sell side primarily, but also on the buy side. And a lot of the book talks about this concept called workability. And I know I'll shut up in a minute, but I'll just finish off by giving you this kind of context for you. And I talk about context. Context is very important. Like, what is context? Like, we all live in context. Like right now, the context of the Constitution of the United States dictates laws, practices. That's a context. Same for selling. And what I find fascinating is that salespeople talk about relationship selling, like, oh, it's all about relationships. And I'm one of those people who likes to probe. I like, could you explain what does that actually mean? And no matter what the description, and they vary, it always seems to be the same response, which is likability. So you're saying relationships about, they like me, I like them, I know their kids, they're comfortable having dinner with me. The problem with that thinking, the concept, the context and the mindset is you have a commodity and the product isn't that valuable. Therefore, they have to like you to buy from you versus your competitors. And what I dig into is workability includes likability, because no one wants to buy from someone they don't like. But workability is more about keeping your word. It's more about being a good citizen. It's more about timely feedback, which is the #1 source of suffering for salespeople. You probably know this, which is you send a proposal and you get back crickets. And then you're chasing your buyer. Did you get my proposal? What's happening? And now you start beating yourself up. Did I screw up? Did I say something wrong? I don't know where I stand. So if buyers understood the damage that they do to salespeople by not responding, by basically, and I'm not talking about unsolicited emails, you don't respond to those, but I'm talking about, I had a really productive meeting with you for 2 hours, for an hour, for 45 minutes. You said you wanted a proposal. You said you wanted a proposal, not me, you said, yeah, send me a proposal. And I did exactly what you said. Could you not give me the courtesy of responding, please? And so I think there's a demand out there for a book like this that kind of tells buyers, listen, you're there to buy something. You're there to get value. You're there to pay for something that you want that's going to solve a problem. You got to be a decent human being. You got to know how to work your salesperson. And so that's kind of the stuff that I feel is missing in all these how-to sell books, of which if you go on Amazon, there's 1 million. They're all saying, use my 5-step process, do these 3 things, you'll always be successful. And what I start with my book is most sales happen by accident. And anyone who's trying to tell you different is getting paid to tell you that.
That is so powerful and so resonates. I love what both Dr. Velma and you, Charles, have given us here. 2 really essential things. Dr. Velma, just the basic idea of doing stuff, action, taking action, not sitting back, being proactive about your life, whether it's your business or your relationships. And then Charles, this is such an important concept that all of us struggle with, right? Because we're all in a way selling in something, right? In some way. And it takes 2 to tango. And, that frustration of crickets, constant crickets, to me, a lot of that relates to what I think of as the global tribe, as honest, professional, capable, but also, interactive, right? Transparent. Like if you're not going to buy, don't say that you're interested and then ghost someone. That's not professional. That's not the way we move things forward in the world, because it wastes everybody's time. And so I've never heard anybody really articulate it the way you've done there. So as always, brilliant. Thank you very much. Let's go to our next speaker, Alex Devereaux, who also brings so much to the table. And it's interesting that both he and Dr. Velma are so involved with diversity, equity, inclusion. Alex is also very involved with innovation and helping clients get to the next level by looking at what they have and then discovering the diamond amidst a lot of the other things and then working through that. The world can be very complex, and Alex helps people get there. Alex, tell us a little bit more about your book. Why did you write it? What inspired you? And what else would you like to say to kick things off?
Wow. Well, thank you, Doug, and thank you everyone for being available for this wonderful hour, or evening, depending on what part of the country the world you're in, for that matter, country, world. And so thank you, Gloria and Doug, for providing such a wonderful platform for us to share our thoughts. Most of them were inner thoughts that became, externalized, with pages. When I was, my focus has been on more technical, business related, structural, type issues. And so when the opportunity came for me to, by the publisher because my first book was on decision making, the second book, he said, well, gee, we'd like someone to write on this particular subject. And I'm going, then I experienced crickets. I said, I don't think of myself as an expert in, talking about DEI. I respect the HR folks. They spend a lot of time in that space. I said, so I have to dig into, my past a little bit, and said, what can I do to share my perspective, as a functional, employee / business person with respect to DEI? What are some of the issues that you encounter? And so in doing so, I had also been given the opportunity to present to an ERG group here with SRP and, APS and a number of other companies in the area, University of Phoenix, ASU. And I said, so what can I deliver to them that's going to be a little different, that's not as HR focused, but really on what matters in terms of business, because my focus is on performance, generating revenue, being able to introduce new ideas and opportunities to help the business grow and expand. So what does that have to do with, what's the relationship between DEI and business growth and performance? And so as I started exploring it and I started preparing for this presentation, I said, I'm going to talk about leadership. I'm going to talk about leadership with respect to those groups, because those groups don't realize it, but they are contributors and they are performers. And so as I started exploring it, I said to myself, so then I have to ask the next question and say, what's the real issue on the table? And of course, I've gone through affirmative action, transition, although I was not a beneficiary, I didn't benefit from affirmative action directly, but I was aware of it. And I said, well, what benefits did that provide companies in terms of opportunities and to sort of like level the playing field, if you will. And so what I concluded was the bottom line is this: if you somehow can't contribute to performance, then the corporation kind of gets soft on certain issues. In other words, they pay less attention to things that don't support revenue. So I said, let me talk about this from a revenue generating perspective. What do we do here? And so what are the issues and what are the differences? It's pretty complex. There are a lot of issues on the table. And I said, well, how do we sort them out? It's kind of like having marbles on the table. As long as you don't shake the table, the marbles don't move. But when you move the table, the marbles start to move and they start bouncing and colliding on each other. And to me, that's what DEI is all about. We have all these differences because you have different type of marbles. Not all the marbles are the same. They're all different. So I said, okay, so what's the real problem here? The real problem is this. First of all, we have marbles on the table. We have to figure out a way to get the marbles to move in the same direction. So if we can't get all the marbles moving in the same direction, we can't really be effective with the marbles. They're all over the place. They're colliding with each other, banging each other, et cetera. And to me, that's what happens in an organization from a DEI perspective, is that we lose sight of what's really important. So now if we make that association with marbles with race becomes the first thing that comes on the table. Well, there's bias and blah, 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 whatever. Listen, no, it really is about preference. I prefer one type of marble over the other. I used to play marbles when I was a kid, so I like cat eyes. I think cat eyes marbles, and I'm playing with friends, and we're collecting marbles. Back in the day when we didn't have video games, I want to date myself, but we played marbles. We sat in the backyard and we were outside, shooting marbles and trying to collect marbles. So we had these great, beautiful marbles. And said, so the bottom line is this: how do we get all the marbles to move together? It's a question. So then I said, so what are the differences? So when he said, first thing we come up here in America, we talk about race. Oh, it's race, it's race. And I said, wait a minute. According to the true definition of race, it's really about you cannot procreate. That's what difference you are, different species. So let's throw that out of the window here, because that's not the issue. But what I found is that it was more culturally related. That's where a lot of the differences are. And trying to understand that structure with respect to, culture is what I started to focus on. And so I said, what influences that? So I got a little technical because I have a technical background, engineering degree. So we got to become more empirical about this. Try to understand and differentiate, what's really happening. And so that's when I became aware of the fact that, first of all, there's this thing called the Dunlap number that archaeologists use, right? And so, and Lenny's shaking her head, she understands what I'm talking about, right? And so Dunlap number says, guess what? You can handle close relationships, 125 close relationships. Your neocortex can only handle 125 close relationships. You're saying, okay, what does that mean? That means that we have this tendency to automatically get into this clustering. We cluster, say, look, I'm sorry, I can only handle 125 close relationships, that sets it off. And then you have this all, like, for example, there's 25, 40 different factors associated with differentiation from a cultural perspective. And of course, Lenny could probably attest to that, right? All these differences, I'm a veteran, age, gender, we've got millennials versus Gen Xers. Take it, we see all these different differences, right? So I said to myself, okay, I got that. So now what? What is it that I need to understand here that's most important? And then what I did, I became aware of this thing called, I said, well, all these differences in how we adapt and accept it's really about learning, right? And so I said, we go through this phase, choosing, we decide, and then we get to acceptance. And that's where we stop. We stop with acceptance. And so I said, so what does that mean? Well, back to the Dunlap number. I can only handle 125 relationships. I'm sorry, again, I have to shift and change and adjust and decide who I'm going to stick with and who I'm going not to, who I'm not going to connect with. And so that's how I decide what my special interest group is. It's really not decided based on race. It's really decided on what I can handle from a psychological standpoint, ultimately. So there's this parapsychological aspect. When you look at it from a parapsychological standpoint, it says, if you ever ask yourself the question where you've encountered someone that was different, and you ask yourself, can I really connect with this person or not?
Okay. So you've got this philosophy and you've incorporated this into the book, I think is what you're saying.
Right. Yes,
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's an amazingly fresh look at things. And I think I see the messages in the chat area that I think it's all resonating with us, that it's, at least for me, it's a fresh idea, and there's a lot of appreciation for that thought process.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. We're going to need to keep moving so that we can wrap up on time, because we need to also now speak to Erica. Erica is our last speaker, and Erica, you've got a lot going on the last couple of years, and somehow you're finding time to write a book as well, moving to Vancouver, Washington, reconnecting to the metro Portland area. And now you're taking on this challenge. Tell us more about your inspiration and what got you down this path.
Well, thank you for having me, first of all, and Gloria, and Doug, and everybody here. Thank you for the support. And really, when it gets down to it, it was this that was inspiring, because for years, people have come to me when they've had trouble constructing an email or writing a card or a resume or things like that. And I've just written, and I used to keep a journal by my bed because I would literally get an idea for a story and I would just wake up and write. And I've done this for years. So it's kind of funny because when I moved here last year, I came across my journals where I have a children's book I never published. I just flowed out and I wrote it down, and there it is, and poetry. But the basics for this book was a compilation of stories. My mother had a very sad childhood, and she felt anonymous. And then she just didn't feel like she was worthy, that she belonged, until she met my father and I was adopted. And so I always wanted to tell her story. Then fast forward to, and I'm resonating with a lot of you with just experiences over time. I have 3 daughters, and just thinking about young ladies and girls in other countries that aren't heard and their opinions aren't valued, and wanting my girls to be strong and heard and vocal and confident. And then when one of my grandmothers was alive, when I would go visit her in assisted care, just seeing other people there just sitting with no visitors, they just felt like they had lived this life, and here they are anonymously just sitting. And it just, all of these things just resonated with me, and I've carried them. So just in different instances, people have said, oh my goodness, you should write a book. And my stories about real estate, I can't make it up. I really can't make it up. And people tell me I should just write a book about it. So that's in the works as well. But what I wanted to do with this book was to take all of these stories, and it's from preteens, teenagers, friends of my children that I've seen that just seem to fall through. I wanted to take these stories and put it together so that it resonates for across generations and brings about, hopefully, a light, the positivity that can come out through connections and to make people more aware through storytelling of how pervasive this feeling of anonymity is amongst so many different groups of people. And it's not just gender specific, it's not age specific, it's not race specific. And I think in a social media world, we have really lost sight of it. So honestly, the pandemic was where I said, okay, enough. I can't just talk about these things and not do anything about it. So that's when I really started writing, and the author series has really propelled me to not just think about it anymore, to really inscribe it and keep going with it, and get it out there so that people can hopefully feel I am valuable, I do radiate, and there's liberation and freedom in doing so. So that's where it is. And Charles, I just want to speak to your point too. I do training, I do coaching and mentoring of real estate agents, and I'm working on developing classes for this to teach across the board. Anyway, in terms of the sales perspective, what I'm always working with people is, let's take your strengths and your fears and hesitancies and couple them so that you can be more effective. And I said, it's my job to meet you where you are, because in real estate and other businesses, people assume that your sales goals are their sales goals, and that is not the case. So why are we beating people over the head? Oh, yes, you can do X number of transactions. It's like, let's meet you where you are and develop you to where you want to go in your sales journey, and forget what criteria the other people have. It's about you, because when you start there, then you will reach success. When you dig deep into your personality and utilize that, that's where I feel people will have success. So that's all incorporated into these stories in this book.
Wow, so much there. That's amazing. Thank you so much. There were
Thank
so many things
you.
in there that I connected with. We have about 20 minutes total, and so for us to have time for open questions, we probably really only have one more question from me, and ask all of you to maybe to keep it to a couple minutes, and then we'll open up the floor and ask more general. And so I'm going to combine a couple questions together for each of you, and maybe start, Dr. Velma, with you. What's been a big surprise for you, or a key surprise for you through this process, and what is the impact that you want your book to have?
Yes, those are really great questions. The surprise through the journey has actually been understanding that I'm not the only one that's going through this journey. And so oftentimes we feel it's a feeling of isolation. And then there is a feeling of a level of transparency. You know, how do I remain authentically me, transparent, while also making an impact? And so in writing When God Says Go, it has truly been an awakening to see that millions of people across the globe are inspired by the book. In fact, I've had several people, well, hundreds of people email my team saying, amazing things. In fact, we had one lady just last week in South Africa that mentioned she was contemplating suicide, and she read the book, and it was something. The book sparked a newfound purpose in her, and so she just wanted to thank me for that. And so when I think about the impact that I want the book to continue making across the globe is for people to understand that tapping into your purpose. And sometimes we have to die spiritually in order to live. And to me, that's powerful, because oftentimes we feel like, we're doing things on our own, like because we have, degrees, because our level of education, because of our influence, because of all of these different things. And honestly, it's not that. I believe that we all operate in the gifts, and a gift is an inherited capacity that was placed on the inside of us before we were even born. And so when we get back to the basics of understanding what we're here to accomplish, we're all human beings, and we're here to solve problems. We are here to solve problems. And I think that understanding when God says go in the journey, it's understanding that we're one body with many moving parts. We all have problems, but we are all here to serve one another and to be a solution to a problem.
Very powerful. By the way, congratulations on the 10-year anniversary of ThinkZilla. How does ThinkZilla tie into all of this?
Yeah, so thank you very much. It's been quite a journey, but so ThinkZilla ties into this because, again, ThinkZilla is me. ThinkZilla is my brain, and everything I do is based on servanthood. Everything I do is solving problems. And so when you look at my passion for helping people and helping people out of poverty, when I started ThinkZilla 10 years ago, I started as a marketing and a public relations strategy firm. 3 years into ThinkZilla, we started to receive a lot of inquiries from public and private companies that was noticing the work that we were doing in the communities and working with small businesses. And I then learned that I can continue working with small businesses through public and private partnerships. And so then we became the go-to source of community engagement. And so I believe that my servanthood and walking in alignment with my purpose and being an authentic version of myself, because this is the thing, you have to be I would rather be an authentic version of me than a cheap imitation of anybody else. And so with that being said, I believe that's how ThinkZilla has gotten to where we are, and I'm not going to change that. I'm going to remain authentic. I'm going to remain the person that I am. And guess what? We're one body with many moving parts. That's it.
Hallelujah. I'm going to stand up, and I am totally inspired. Thank you very much. Absolutely right on the money. Thank you. Charles, how could you possibly follow that? Oh my God, where can you go from there? I'm not sure where, but same questions for you. What have been your biggest surprises and or a big surprise during this journey? And then what is the impact that you want your book to make? Your book is called Enabling Buying in a World of Selling. And going back to Dr. Velma, your book is When God Says Go. So how about enabling buying in a world of selling? Surprise, and what impact do you want for it to make?
Well, I'd like to take a few minutes just to prompt some feedback and Q&A when we get to that point. So I've set a target of at about 400 pages for the book, around 100,000 to 120,000 words. Right now, I'm at 80,000, and that includes about 50,000 of what I call a decent draft. And I'm using sort of a 7-step process that just came to me. It's not like I thought about it ahead of time. So the first step is I write a whole bunch of gibberish just to get stuff out of my head. Then I create some sort of structure out of that gibberish. And then I draft and redraft and draft and redraft until it's at a point where now it's polishing. And I just have to make sure that I don't get too hung up in one section doing all of this stuff, knowing that I got all this other stuff to do. So I have to, one of my challenges is to say, with this section, it's done enough, because if I keep obsessing with this one section, I got this monster mountain to climb for the rest of the book, and that's just going to make it an impossible journey. Then organize and then add more and refine, because one of the biggest surprises, to answer your question, Doug, is that character development and plot development isn't in your head, at least it's not in my head first, and then it goes out on paper. It actually evolves as the writing is occurring. And I'll find I go down this alley and I'm like, I didn't even think of that alley. And that alley turns into another turning point. And before I realize it, I've just created some new concept that when I read it back, I go, yeah, this is good. And it wasn't in me to begin with. So the writing, the surprise is that the process of the writing, while there's a lot of thoughts in my head that kind of gives it structure to begin with, it actually takes a life of its own. And that to me was a monster surprise. To answer your second question, like what impact do I want it to have? Well, I think I talked about it at the beginning, which is, I think, and I agree with you, Doug, that we sell, whether you have the title salesperson or not, you're selling ideas, you're selling marriage to your spouse. You want to get married to someone, you got to kind of sell them on the idea. You got to sell people on where you're going to go to dinner if you are a couple. Like, I got to sell you on Chinese versus Japanese. And so there's that going on all the time. What I fundamentally believe the contribution, there's several contributions, but the main contribution is I want to address what I consider to be, at least in the corporate world, a fundamentally flawed model between buyer and seller. Like, I got the money, you dance to my tune. Well, I'm a salesperson. I'm only here to get you to buy something. Otherwise, I'm not going to waste my time. Is sort of what a lot of these interactions boil down to. Most of the time, they're hidden. And because they're hidden, well, first of all, I think most people don't realize that they're actually revealing more than they realize. And that buyers are a lot smarter when you go, I'm not really here to sell you anything. I'm just here to visit. I'm only doing a survey. Screw you, you're here to sell me something. And I know it, and you know it. So why don't you just come out and tell me, okay, big shot, Mr. Buyer, why don't you answer my emails when I send you a goddamn email? Why don't you respond to me on time when I send you a proposal that I spent all weekend working on? Big shot. So I think there's this sort of tension that is occurring in the buy-sell cycle. Some of it is healthy. I just think that a lot of lying is going on. I think a lot of deception is going on. And I think fundamentally it's all driven by anxiety, that no one really wants to lie to another person. No one really wants to be mean to another person. I just think, look at politics, look at what's going on in the world. I think if we could kind of take the model from my book a little bit about what I said earlier, workable relationships. You don't have to like the person, they just have to work. So you get what you want and the other person gets what they want. And then lastly, the other thing I want to address, Doug, is I don't think people, maybe on this Zoom call, I don't think people in general recognize how much suffering occurs for a salesperson when they're not making their numbers. When they're not making their numbers, they beat their spouse, they drink, they do drugs, they suffer, because the problem that I've encountered in all the years that I've been doing sales training is that salespeople, by and large, are unable to separate themselves from their numbers. They are their numbers. And when they're having a great month, life is great, and they're on vacation, and they're having a fantastic time. But think about the opposite. When their numbers are down, their manager beats on them, their peers think they're crap. No one wants to make eye contact because they're afraid that some of that juju will rub off on them. All of this mysticism about, selling and the anxiety associated with it, I want to call out in the book and provide some examples in the form of, to your point, Erica, when I first started, I was kind of doing it in a way that I'm describing now, but it was like my editor said, yeah, it all makes sense, but you got to put a story in there, man, because if you keep beating people up with all these how-tos, they're going to throw the book out the window. And so that's what I think is the big aha, that it has to be real, has to be a story, has to be genuine, I literally have to model in the book what it is that I'm talking about.
Perfect. Noted. And Cesar, noted for you as well in terms of our book. That's what we've talked about in the same way. Erica, last, and then we'll of the four, and then we'll go to probably one question. If you have a question, please raise your hand, and we'll figure something out after Erica speaks. But Erica, same question to you. Big surprise so far, and what is the impact that you want the book to have? And your book, by the way, is called My Radiant Freedom.
Correct. Yes.
I'll
So-
need to Alex as well. Sorry, Alex.
So the biggest aha, I guess, has been just how extensive the basis of the book is. In a nutshell, it's just when I started thinking of stories and experiences over time, and spouses who, one spouse has lost their partner, and all of a sudden they don't even know, sometimes they don't even know who they are or how to go forward. And just the other examples that I shared earlier, that was the biggest aha, and incorporating this, because I felt all of this needed to be addressed. This needed to be a book that wasn't just geared to one sector, one group or another. I wanted it to be all inclusive. And really what I want to see from this book is empowerment for people to resonate with the stories and take that and get to a point where, yes, I can radiate. I have these qualities. I don't exist through somebody else. My voice is powerful, needs to be heard. My story, my life story, for someone who has lived decades, my life story is meaningful and it deserves to be heard. I don't deserve to be just kind of forgotten in a corner, like, thank you, and moving on. So I'm hoping that it resonates with people and that they can find motivation and encouragement and come out and free themselves from where they've possibly been.
Very powerful. Thank you very much.
You're
Alex,
welcome.
how about you? Biggest surprise, and what is the impact that you want for your book? And what's the title, by the way?
Well, the title of the book is DEI, Is Your Organization Thriving or Dying? Fire up your DEI renewal the Agile way. And so I really wanted to provide, this sort of structure for saying, let's level the playing field here, meaning that from the standpoint of saying, let's look at the playing field. We think it's all smooth, but it's rocky. It's got a lot of holes and rocks and all sorts of things that are associated with the environments that we work in. And so we all have to work together to make sure we have a reasonable playing field. What we're dealing with right now with Great Resignation and quiet quitting, et cetera, it's all about something's wrong. The field's not right. People are getting cut, people are getting hurt. And so we have a lot of injuries on the field, and we have to figure out how to keep people healthy. And so that's why we have this issue with health right now. Mental health is because of what has been always present there. When you talk about quiet quitting has always been around. It's just that you can get away with it. We just labeled it recently because of all the dynamics of what's going on. So my intention is basically to do a couple of things. One is to address the issues, like say, let's basically, compare apples to apples, oranges to oranges. And that is, it's really about unconditional, humanistic, cultural acceptance. And that's what I talk about in the book. And it's just simple. And so we have to figure out how to manage that process. And most of us haven't been taught how to manage it effectively. You know, we've done it by observation and by dynamics and by, you know, our tribal and ethnic, you know, conditioning is what happens, you know, that's been associated with that. And so we have to figure out how to be humans. We talk about being humans, we have to be humans. So that's the first thing. Secondly, in this next book that I'm in the process of finishing, it focuses on leadership. What I see the problem with Great Resignation and also with this whole quiet quitting has to do with leadership. You know, we need to go back and we need to change that model in terms of that Tayloristic, you know, mindset in terms of the management. And we need to have a different management model that allows us to be able to effectively engage. You know, Charles makes reference to, you know, some wonderful things in terms of buyers, right? In terms of saying, hey, what about the buyers and feedback to buyers? So guess what? The buyers are the people that are working. And so they're saying, we don't want to buy anymore. You know, so now companies have to figure out how to engage their people in a more constructive way that will support profitability. And so that's the other aspect that I'm addressing in this next book that's soon to be, you know, completed, is to address it, is what to do. You know, how do you organize? How do you get people to actually do things and produce results? That's what I'm all about. That's what I focus on. And the innovation related to that has to do with what? Back to us figuring out how to be better human beings. That's it. You know, the war in Russia and in Ukraine, what's the purpose of it? You know, the purpose is to kill a lot of human beings. Well, you know, what's the other issue? So we have a lot of things that we have to deal with that you know, somehow just kind of like gets in the spaghetti mix, you know, and we're trying to sort through it in a way that we can actually make some sense out of it. Right now, there's a sense of urgency that we all need to look at collectively moving forward. That's what's going to enable us to survive as a species on this planet. So my intention is to focus on supporting the efforts of producing better leaders, and so that they can support people in moving forward and making a better life for themselves and their families.
Thank you, Alex. Alex Devereaux. I'll just call your book DEI because I couldn't write fast enough for the rest of it.
I do the same thing.
Charles Bernard, Enabling Buying in a World of Selling. Dr. Velma Tram, When God Says Go, and Erica Herval, My Radiant Freedom. All of you have shared some really significant emotion and important concepts in our lives, both business and personal. So thank you for doing that. We've run out of time for Q&A because we have actually another event that's going to come up in a few minutes. So I'd like to pull this all to a close and introduce Lainey Denslow, who's the moderator for the next event. Maybe you'll do a better job than me. Undoubtedly you will. In fact, Lainey is one of the best moderators and facilitators I've ever seen personally. She's also an expert on selling in America and understanding Americans and our cultural stuff that goes on that people who are not American need to understand to be successful here. Lainey, you've got another amazing group of folks speaking in November.
Yes, I do. We all do, because this group every month is a blessing to all of us. There's so much sharing. We're fortunate today to actually have one of our November authors who's been on this call, Joe Bockerstadt, is going to speak next month. Tad Zilberg, who's the executive director of the Global Chamber in Tel Aviv, Israel. And Christina, who isn't able to be here today, hopefully will be well enough to join us next time. But most of all, our leader, Gloria Peterson, whose idea this author series is going to talk about 2 new books that she has coming out. So we will have another dynamic, engaging session next month. So I hope that you will all join us then. And Doug, I'm going to say thank you for the warm introduction and turn it back to you to close us out.
Very much. Thank you very much. Gloria, any final word?
No, I think you've said it all. This has been great. Certainly has inspired me as well as you, Doug, because you've got a book coming out now too. And, you know, if anyone listening has a book in draft form, it doesn't have to be finished. contact me because we have to look at our lineup for 2023. Oh, I know, I have one more thing. Yes, definitely, definitely. Thank you, thank you. One thing I encourage you to do, because in December, when we close out the year, it is a duet with Doug and I. We will be co-hosting. And one of the things that I want to encourage all of you to do, and certainly I walk my talk in any way I can, is to read books. I don't see, you can see that. Well, these are books I've read from our authors, and pick one that just really hit the note with you. And of course, they all did, but just share your review of one of the books. So if you would kindly read one of your author community's books. I have read 6, 7, I think so far. I keep thinking I'm going to go off to some island and finish these things. But anyway, that's what I encourage you to do, because I really want there to be a little bit of an author review of somebody else talking about your works instead of you talking about your works.
Thank you, Gloria. Extraordinary finish up, and just really all of you have been really amazing today. Thanks to the audience as well. Sorry we ran out of time. If you have any questions, feel free to connect via LinkedIn. Send us an email if you'd like to connect up with one of the speakers, or however you'd like to do it. As you know, we stand here ready to help and support you and your success. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day. I'm going to jump in. We have our Global Chamber Milwaukee, Appleton, Green Bay, and Madison meet up right now, and we're talking about exporting and market research to do exporting. So jump in with us here in a moment with also the Global Chamber Chicago group as well. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you.